Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani and welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism. It's my hope that this content, these videos, will help you better understand this personality style and these relationships to help you navigate personal relationships, family, and workplace situations. So we've been doing a series on the family roles, and specifically taking each family role, kind of breaking it down and sort of reflecting on how this can affect you into adulthood if you were in this role, or if you're sort of co-parenting with a narcissistic co-parent, how this might even be playing out in the children you're raising. So this role is one I have never talked about before because I actually don't think the people who take this role would ever watch this channel. This is what we call the brainwashed child. Now, like I said, my hope in this series is that people can sort of understand the kinds of risks that these family roles take, but this is a role I've never talked about before. Like I said, it's this family role, I haven't talked about it in the past because the fact is that the people who likely were this type of child are never going to be the ones who watch this content. And if they do, or someone tells them about it, they're more likely to be the ones who write me those angry emails I get, or to be someone that you, as somebody who might have been in a narcissistic family system, is at odds at. But definitely not someone who wants to learn about narcissism. So they're not watching, but you might have been affected by them. What is this role? These brainwashed children, they're the family members, the siblings, the ones who just don't see it. They may be deeply narcissistic themselves, or they are world-class enablers. They may believe that the narcissistic parent actually had everyone's best interest in mind, and that everyone is being really mean and judgmental, and may even accuse others in the family system of not being grateful or being disrespectful or not recognizing the sacrifices the narcissistic parent made. They will deny any abuse their siblings experienced, even if they witnessed it, and they will justify the bad behavior that happened in the household. Every so often, the brainwashed child role may overlap with other roles. Almost never would they overlap with the scapegoat, but you might sometimes see some overlap with the golden child or the helper child. For lack of a better term, I'm calling this role the brainwashed child. I mean, I couldn't come up with a better one. As I said, the people who are in this role are definitely not the people who are watching this channel. However, they may be your siblings and the people who continue to enable your narcissistic parent even while you're an adult. And in fact, may have left you believing in childhood and in adulthood that you're the one who's ungrateful and leave you even more gaslighted than you already are. In some ways, it doesn't make sense to even talk about these folks. They ain't watching this. But you may have a sibling who's like this and wonder, what role were they in? They seem to be all in on this. Or you may be co-parenting with someone who has a narcissistic personality, and you may recognize this sort of brainwashed pattern in one of your children. This brainwashed child or role may not be a narcissistic person, but they also may, and if at all the roles, this is one where it may be a little bit more likely. They may just be someone in this family system, though, who is even more manipulated than anyone else in the family system. The brainwashed child may be really self-serving. Some may use the term codependent, but ultimately, whatever you term it, they really are fully brainwashed. They cannot see how these patterns are affecting other people. They truly believe the narcissistic parent's story, victimhood, you name it, hook, line, and sinker. So the big question in this series is, what happens to them? Well, in many cases, the people in this role remain really allied to the narcissistic parent until their dying day. They will create a sort of triangulated unit between them and the narcissistic parent against the world. They may be the person who gets angry if anyone in the family system tries to set boundaries or firewalls or gray rocks. They will take umbrage if the narcissistic parent or if they themselves are not included in family events and aren't able to understand, well, they're not included in family events because of the lack of empathy and all of the rest of it. They will often rage or lash out at family members who view the narcissistic parent as narcissistic or as anything but a good and devoted parent. The brainwashed person may actually go on to create their own lives and hold on to their own version of events, that they come from a perfectly fine family with great parents, but they had deeply selfish siblings who lied and twisted the truth and abandoned the family. And they really believe it. The brainwashed child in adulthood may get into a committed relationship, and perhaps the person whom they get into a relationship with or get married to will wonder, why is there so much family estrangement? Why are the siblings so sort of out of the system? The brainwashed adult child, in fact, may firmly ensconce their own children into a relationship with your narcissistic parent, who is this children's narcissistic grandparent. It can actually be hard to watch all of this unfold if you were in any of the other family roles, especially if you were in the scapegoat role. The brainwashed sibling can be a person who sort of re-traumatizes people in the family system and leads to a lot of confusion. It can be hard to watch your difficult parent who hurt you and others in the family. It's hard to watch them get the whole grandchild experience, and especially if that narcissistic parent has resources to watch the brainwashed siblings' children be the beneficiaries of your narcissistic parents' generosity and largesse. It can feel like your brainwashed sibling and your narcissistic parent were the ones who won in the end. That's a hard thing to answer. I guess it's a bit of a philosophical question of whether they won or not. Now, the one question I get is, do the brainwashed children ever finally see it? Sometimes. Sometimes. It would really take the narcissistic parent doing a real number on them, and then for the brainwashed person to sort of step out of the fog and to then ascribe responsibility to the narcissistic parent. Obviously, no matter what, the narcissistic parent is not going to show empathy. They're going to keep behaving in an entitled manner. They're going to keep taking the victim role. They're going to keep seeking validation and be arrogant. And the brainwashed child, even as an adult child, may just keep making excuses. The brainwashed role is the enabler extraordinaire. Sometimes you wonder if the brainwashed child doesn't come around despite seeing the narcissistic parent's behavior, because it is just the stubbornness of not wanting to be wrong, that they wouldn't want to give in to the idea that the narcissistic parent is anything but good, and that you, as a sibling, may be bad. But sometimes they do finally come out of the fog, and in those cases, the brainwashed child experiences grief. Lots and lots of grief. Sometimes grief over being complicit in the harm that came to their siblings, regret over the time lost in their own life, grief over denying everyone else's pain. But I gotta tell you, this happening is a real rarity, so don't wait for it. If you are co-parenting and you see that one of your children is making excuses for the narcissistic parent, it can be disheartening and heartbreaking, especially if you notice that your other children are starting to become aware that their other parent is quite unhealthy, and yet you have this one child who keeps carrying a torch. This is a really difficult situation. In these cases, it is never your role to be the one that shows them the light. This is a process, their discovery of who their parent is. This is a process they need to come to on their own, without your involvement as a co-parent, ever. The best you can do is to hold space for the difficult experiences your other children are having, to stop the brainwashed child when they try to negate your other children's experiences, but to not speak badly of the other parent. And this is not easy to do. It may involve saying something like, listen, your brother is having an experience, and teaching them that empathy means that you let your brother have that experience without denying or judging it. and tell them that it's not okay to judge them and to support their brother. Sometimes it works, often it doesn't. This can be devastating if you are watching a child fall into line with the narcissistic parent. And I hate to say it's radical acceptance here. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. In this world of narcissistic relationships, none of this is fair. As I said, this family role doesn't identify as such. They don't go around saying, oh, I got it. Yeah, I'm the brainwashed child. Most people who had the brainwashed child role, they don't even believe in narcissism, though they may think that other family members are narcissistic. The outcomes here, what happens to the brainwashed child, they're hard to discern because we often don't get to see these folks in action as much. For example, they sure as hell aren't going to show up for treatment with someone like me. The few times in my own life when I have met the so-called brainwashed folks, they can have sort of a Pollyanna feel. Sometimes they have a bit of a narcissistic kind of antagonistic feel. Sometimes they have a bit of self-serving feel. But above all else, the one thing I have noticed is that they tend to be master enablers. You have to accept that you're not going to be the one to awaken this sort of brainwashed sibling or child. It can have the feel of having lost this person to sort of a cult. And the problem is that this particular cult is your family of origin, so you were once an unwitting member. And it can be really difficult, if not impossible, to break people from the haze until they are ready. If a brainwashed sibling does get awakened and wants to make amends, well, that's a very personal decision, and one for you to decide whether it feels right to you. There is no right path. I struggled with the word for this role because I was like, how would you term somebody who just sort of bought the narcissistic parent story entirely, who falls into line with them, who tells everyone they were wrong, who denies the abuse? Like I said, it feels like they were brainwashed, that they were convinced that this was right and everyone else is wrong. Whatever we term this role, it is a role that this person results in a lot of pain for other people in that family system, not just for the various siblings in that family system, but sometimes for the other parent. So if a narcissistic parent is married to a non-narcissistic parent, they may very well deny the abuse and the invalidation that that non-narcissistic parent experienced. It can be very painful to have had this kind of a sibling as a child. It can be really painful to watch it sustain in adulthood, and it can really result in a lot of familial chaos and triangulation. But the fact of the matter is, it's pretty rare for the brainwashed child to wake up. Thanks again.